If you take a look around, our economy is falling apart at the seams. Everything that used to sort of work is not really working anymore the way that it always used to. Everywhere you turn around, there are economic hazards that are piling up, and nothing's really being done to address any of these problems, which makes me think that a lot of these issues are going to continue to get worse before they get better. One of the big ones I always like to refer to is fast food, specifically McDonald's. Now, McDonald's has been in the news a lot over the past year due to their declining foot traffic and them seeing sales slow down. Well, in 2025, their sales are slowing down even more. Just this past week, McDonald's came out and said that global same-store sales dropped 1% in the first quarter, which was driven by a 3.6% drop in the United States compared to a 2.5% gain last year. Revenue and net income both fell 3% for McDonald's, and this is basically a good way to gauge not just the US economy, but the global economy, because McDonald's are everywhere across the world. And they have all kinds of customers, including people who are on tight budgets. The airline industry and travel right now is completely in the toilet. Delta, American, Alaska, Southwest, and Frontier Airlines all withdrew their financial forecasts entirely in the past few weeks, unable to say with certainty how 2025 would shake out. Well, obviously it's not starting to shake out too good if they're pulling back on their forecasts. Delta Airlines came out and said that travel has largely stalled. United Airlines even came out with two earnings estimates, one from the start of this year and a revised option in case there's a recession. You literally have big airline companies like United planning in and expecting there to be a recession now, guys. What does that tell you? The most recent manufacturing index shows that companies have been lowering production and hiring in April. Construction spending also fell in the month of March. And of course, we got this latest jobs report that say, wait a minute, Michael, what's going on? Everything's looking good. The jobs report just came out much stronger than expected. Yeah, well, we had a lot of months like that last year. And if anybody remembers what happened last year, it's probably going to be the same thing this year. They come out with these job reports that beat expectations by a huge amount. And then what happens? 3, 4, 6 months later, they revise them downward heavily to what they really were. And we can probably expect more of the same here in 2025. But even though we had the strong jobs reading, the unemployment numbers are starting to jump a little bit, because unemployment jumped to a seasonally adjusted 241,000 for the week ending April 26th, which is 18,000 higher from the previous week and the highest total since late February. So that's not looking great. And continuing claims for unemployment right now rose to 1.92 million, which is the highest number that we've seen since November of 2021. We also just saw the US economy shrink in the first quarter of 2025, the first contraction in 3 years. Last time was in 2022 when we had 2 contractions in a row, and they didn't want to call it a recession back then. You also have all major stock market indexes that are down since the beginning of the year. And then, of course, you have the Fed. The Fed was late to the table when it came to raising interest rates due to inflation spiraling out of control. And just as they were late to the game with raising the rates, they never actually raised the rates high enough to do anything. Because the problem is, they said that they were going to increase rates, vowed to keep the rates as high as necessary to squash inflation, which didn't actually happen because inflation is still a problem, even though it might risk a recession. And a lot of people say, well, look, we never had a recession. Well, we are in a recession. It's just not official yet. But even if you want to go by the official stuff and say that we're not in a recession, the only reason that we're not officially in one is because the Fed never raised rates high enough to begin with to actually cause some real economic pain. You think things are bad now? Imagine if the Fed funds rate was at 7%. But of course, they didn't have the guts to do that. But it doesn't really matter at this point, because other sectors of the economy are kind of doing the work for them in the form of layoffs. We have seen mass layoffs so far this year, and some of the largest ones of the year were just announced over the past couple of weeks, guys. UPS, they just announced that they're going to be letting go of 20,000 people this year, and they're going to be closing down dozens of its facilities as they start to reduce the shipments for Amazon. In fact, they are going to be shutting down 73 leased and owned buildings by the end of June. And they might even identify additional facilities for closure as the year goes on. So this might not even be the end of the pain for UPS, guys. That's 20,000 people out of a job within the next month. And this is because they are going to be reducing the amount of low margin Amazon parcels it delivers by more than half over the next 18 months. So they're going to be seeing a voluntary reduction in the amount of packages they deliver. They specifically wanted this. And remember, UPS also cut 12,000 jobs last year in 2024. That's another 20,000 this year. And this includes everybody. We're talking delivery drivers, package handlers, management, you name it. One of the other major layoff announcements that happened over the past couple of weeks was Intel. Intel announced that they're going to be laying off about 20,000 people because they said they're going to lay off about 20% of their workforce. And as of right now, they have about 108,000 people working for them. So a little over 20,000 people are going to be done. And guess what? Intel was another one of these big companies last year that already fired 15,000 people back in August of 2024. And if you're one of the lucky ones that continues to keep their job over at Intel, well, right now there's a hybrid work schedule where you have to be at the office 3 days a week and you can work from home 2 days a week. Well, that's about to change too. Starting on September 1st, they're going to be updating their policy to require their employees to come in 4 days a week and only work 1 day from home. And they want to give you an advance notice so you have time to make any adjustments to your daily routines. So there you go, guys. Next step is going to be full back in the office 5 days a week after that. I mean, maybe they'll leave it so you have 1 day at home. I don't know. But who could have predicted any of this? Who was talking about any of this stuff? Anybody out there? Anybody was making videos about these things over the past few years? No, nobody knew that we were going to see all these layoffs. Nobody knew that we were going to have a big return to the office mandate happening with all these companies that were all remote work friendly. Nobody mentioned that before. Don't know where I heard that. But things are getting so bad that there is a giant list of companies that are laying off employees just in May of this year. So it is just getting out of control, guys. And the reason we know this is companies are required to send out a warn notice if they're going to be implementing mass layoffs. And there's more than 120 employers so far in May that are planning on letting workers go. Why are they doing this? Well, they are facing rising costs, they're facing waning consumer demand, and they're looking to cut costs any way they can. This is always the easiest way to do it, is let people go. And then of course, other corporations are just doing it out of pure greed just to maximize profits. They're not actually hurting, they're doing okay. They just want to do even better. And there's too many of them to even name, so I will roll the list on the screen here so you guys can see just how many companies are letting people go. And these companies are letting go anywhere between 10 and 100 people. So it's a lot of people losing jobs. Some of the big ones I happened to notice on the list were companies like FedEx, Safeway, Wells Fargo, AT&T, Amazon, Chewy, Pitney Bowes, UPS, Starbucks, Macy's, JP Morgan Chase, along with the other hundreds of companies that are doing this. And this is across all sectors of the economy right now, stretching between things like industry, food, retail, tech, financial companies, you name it, guys. Banking, it doesn't matter. Everybody out there who's working a regular job right now should be bracing themselves for a potential layoff and be ready in case it happens. All the things I've been talking about here on the channel are things that can help the average person prepare, but it's up to you if you're doing it or not. Are you getting out of debt? Have you bought some gold and silver? Do you have a 6-month emergency fund saved up? Just those things alone right there are going to put you in a much better position to absorb an unexpected layoff than somebody who's not doing any of that stuff. And you know what doesn't really give me a whole lot of faith or hope that the job market is going to get better anytime soon? Because the way things are running right now and the way the current system works is it kind of rewards instability for workers while at the same time rewarding stockholders with efficiency and predictability. So it's all just about making gains for the shareholders, guys. That's what it all comes down to. The workers, you're just disposable pieces of the puzzle that can be hired or fired instantly. And going back to the jobs report, well, why is everything so bad, Michael, if the jobs report was so good? Okay, well, they expected 135,000 jobs. It came out with 177,000 jobs in April. Everybody celebrated, right? Well, we saw this happen over and over again last year, and everybody was pessimistic about it because of all the revisions, and rightfully so. Almost every single month there was a downward revision in 2024 to the point where there was essentially no jobs created throughout the entire year. But yet every month when one of these reports would come out, people, including investors in the stock market, would celebrate it and the market would go up, which is kind of stupid. So why are things different now? Just because Trump is president? I don't think that's a smart idea. You know, the people behind putting this data together and their intentions haven't changed, guys. So it doesn't really matter who's president. Like I said before, when Biden was still president and all these shenanigans were going on, I told you just wait and watch and see. Things are going to get worse regardless of who gets elected. And I also said that these shenanigans are going to continue. And here we are with it again. I would be amazed if these statistics don't get downward revised. And that just comes from me not trusting the people in charge, guys. I don't trust the government data and the things that they tell us because it is in all of their best interest to make things look as good as possible for as long as possible. And everybody's about to see a lot of the cheap Chinese products that they buy get a whole lot more expensive because one of these companies that was in the news this week is Temu, that store that sells all that cheap stuff from China. Yeah, well, stores like that have been able to get away with importing these super cheap goods directly from China because of an exemption called de minimis, which basically allows packages valued under $800 to enter the United States duty-free, which is a huge advantage for companies that do this. And so many companies have been exploiting this import strategy over the past decades that this is the vast majority of the imports into our country now. These small packages that are pretty worthless that people buy from overseas. So now that they're going to be closing this loophole and they're expected to bring this number down from $800 down to only $100, you can expect to see higher prices on pretty much all of the cheap Chinese crap that you like to buy. Now, I know not all of it's crap. Some of it is, you know, useful. People need accessories for their hair and makeup and whatever. Different things that we use, you know, combs and just stuff that you don't think about, that the everyday cheap little things. Not all of it's crap. Some of it is useful, but let's be honest, a lot of it is unnecessary stuff that nobody needs. But the bottom line is now you can be assured that the cost of these products are going to be passed on down to you, which is going to be the increase. No longer will these packages be exempt from the tax. And I feel like this situation that we're in right now with the tariffs and all the uncertainty that's going on actually reminds me a lot of how it was back when inflation first started becoming a problem back in 2021. When inflation noticeably started going up, you see it in the numbers, but people weren't really feeling it yet, right? I feel like this is the exact same thing that's happening right now with the tariffs. Everybody's hearing about the tariffs. You hear about, you know, 175% tariff on China and 25% tariffs on other countries and 10% tariffs across the board, right? You hear about that, but a lot of people haven't really felt it yet in their wallet. But I feel like that time is rapidly approaching where you are going to start feeling it in your wallet and it's going to hurt. I don't know exactly how much longer it's going to take for Americans to start feeling the pain from the tariffs, but I will imagine it's going to be at some point later this year. And then we'll just have more stuff to talk about here on YouTube once that actually does happen. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.